November 15th, 8:11 p.m., Austin, Texas. My son, Michael Ward, dropped a white envelope onto my lap. Notice of eviction. Execution date, 20/11, signed, M. Ward. Before I could even breathe, his wife Rachel tapped her phone. My screen lit up. Smart lock, access revoked. They had just thrown me out of my own house. I stood there as the front door clicked shut. Through the window, shadows, laughter. Their laughter. Rachel's voice came through the glass, calm and cutting. You don't belong in this family anymore. I was left on the porch with one suitcase. And the life I had built for them. The air smelled like rain and metal. My home, no longer mine. My own son had evicted me. How could they do this to me? If you want to hear my full story, make sure to subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how it all really started. My name is Margaret Ward, though the few who truly know me call me Meg. I'm 67, a widow with steady hands and a tidy drawer of warranties. I have the habits of a nurse and the memory of a bookkeeper. I know the hum of fluorescent lights at 3:58 a.m., the cling of disinfectant to a cardigan, the ache of feet inside practical shoes. I learned to listen first, to speak calmly, to write down what mattered, and to let noise pass like weather. I keep a small spiral notebook for prices and passwords, and a larger quiet for everything that can't be solved in a day. Jack and I built our life the slow way. Post by post, like a straight fence that would hold through winter. He repaired what broke, I made sure it didn't break again. We started with a dented truck, a rented storage unit, and a promise, never borrow what we couldn't repay. Ward Home Services became Ward Family Holdings, one neighbor at a time. We filed receipts, checked permits, paid taxes early, and mailed handwritten notes with a sprig of lavender from the planter by our back step. Nothing flashy. Just steady. When the boys were small, I worked doubles. Jack brought them to the hospital lot with hot cocoa and lidded cups so they could watch me wave through the ER bay, like I was stepping out for applause. Michael counted the stars on my badge. Evan slept on Jack's shoulder, his hand closed around a red toy fire truck. I saved their construction paper cards in a shoebox and taped spelling tests inside a pantry door only I opened. Love lived in practical places, labeled bins, trunk organizers, calendar squares marked with pencil. Time rearranges people. It sands some edges and sharpens others. My sons grew into their shoulders and into their wants. I tried to teach them to want carefully. I believed I had. Michael, my firstborn, treats rooms like trophies and introductions like ladders. He believes in next deal, next address, next circle. Status clings to him like cologne he no longer smells. He speaks in numbers and deadlines, close Friday. 12% by Q3. He loves momentum more than results. When he calls me mom, I hear the swipe of a card used too often. His hugs are quick. His eyes skim past me toward the doorframe, measuring the exit. Evan smiles like a waiter when the kitchen is late, apology first, request right behind it. He is gentle, almost ceremonially so. He brings flowers on odd Tuesdays and says, "Thought you might like these," and a beat later asks if I could spot him something until Thursday because a client was slow to pay. He calls with good news that leads to a small favor, then a larger one. He means what he says in the moment, follow-through is where the meaning leaks out. If Michael wants the front row, Evan wants the side door. Rachel arrived with perfect posture and cool hands. She offered to bring dessert and showed up with a spreadsheet. She volunteers where cameras are and invoices when they are not. If you compliment her dress, she has a link and a discount code. She is fluent in a new dialect of power, access, streamlining, optimizing. She believes every system has an owner and every owner has a password. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She knows where the switch lives and how to dim a room. None of them started as villains. I am careful with that word. People take steps, steps make a path takes you where you aim. Still, patterns tell on us. A casual question here, a pointed joke there, a habit of checking what isn't theirs to check. A dinner without an invitation. A decision made for convenience. You seldom see the instant the center shifts. You feel it later, when your chair scrapes a floor you paid for and someone tells you to keep your voice down. I am not a woman who throws plates or threats. I record. I file. I know the weight of keys in the palm and the texture of raised numbers on a bank card. I keep originals in one drawer and copies in another. I ask questions twice, once kindly and once precisely. I have a nurse's patience and a bookkeeper's memory. I know which month's vendors slip in quiet fees to see if anyone is still paying attention. I know the sound a lie makes when it is dressed up as concern. After Jack's heart failed, I did not shrink. I stayed the same height and bought sturdier boots. Grief didn't make me fragile, it clarified me. I kept the rituals that held: Sunday tea, a lavender sachet in the linen drawer, the porch bulb replaced before the clock fell back. I went back to work part-time to stay useful. I kept the accounts modest and clean. I labeled the ladders in the garage so no one would climb the wrong one in a hurry. I slept on my side of the bed and left his pillow cool and untouched for a while, then folded the case and put it with the good linens, because love also learns to put itself away. Who are they to me now? They are my sons and my cautionary tales. They are the glossy photograph and the receipt. If love is a ledger, mine is balanced, generous entries, honest notations, every loan recorded, every gift given without an invoice attached. But a ledger is still a truth. It shows patterns you don't want to admit, withdrawals that never slow down, deposits that stop, a signature that no longer looks like gratitude. I am Meg. I do not scare easily. I am the woman who took a phone call in a supply closet so a patient's wife wouldn't see me cry, then walked out and changed a dressing with steady hands. I am the woman who can tell the difference between a mistake and a plan. When the wind rattles the windows, I do not say it is nothing. I check the latch. That is who I am. And that is who they are, a man who confuses speed with success, a brother who waits for rescue, a wife who translates affection into access. I once believed family was a house with a good roof. Now I know it is also a boundary with a good lock, and the wisdom to keep the key. It started quietly, as these things always do. The first shift hides inside small sentences that sound harmless until they echo later. 2 years ago, during dinner at Michael's new house, the one with the white marble counters and the cold air conditioning that hummed like a warning, he said it. "Mom, why don't you sell your house? It's too big for someone like you now." He said it lightly, almost kind, slicing his steak as if the conversation were about wallpaper. Rachel smiled down at her plate. The candlelight glinted off her wedding ring. At the time, I thought it was practicality. My knees were aching more on the stairs. The garden took longer to manage. His words settled into my mind like a seed I didn't think would sprout. I remember answering, "Maybe one day, but your father built that porch with his own hands. It feels like he's still there." Michael nodded, already done listening. "Of course, Mom. Just thinking ahead." That was the first crack, thin, almost invisible. After dinner, Rachel followed me to the kitchen. She carried 2 plates stacked neatly, her tone gentle. "You know," she said, "if you ever needed help with the sale, we could handle the paperwork for you. Michael's great with numbers, and I'm used to legal forms." I thanked her, thinking she meant well. But her eyes lingered on the folder by the fridge, the one labeled utilities and property tax. I should have noticed that look. The way her pupil sharpened, calculating. The next morning, I walked through my house slowly. Sunlight fell across the hallway photographs, Jack holding baby Michael, Evan standing barefoot in the garden, both boys laughing with their mouths full of cake. I dusted the frames, straightened one that tilted. I remember thinking how still the house felt, like it was listening. A few weeks later, Michael stopped by again. He brought Rachel and their daughter, Skylar. They stood in the entryway as if they were touring a property. Rachel ran her hand along the banister and said, "These stairs are lovely. But a young family could really make this place shine. I laughed politely, but something inside me tightened. Skylar noticed, she always does. Grandma, she whispered, tugging at my sleeve, why are they talking like that? I brushed her hair back. They just like to plan, I said. After they left, I found a note on my desk. It was Michael's handwriting, sharp and impatient. Mom, please think seriously about downsizing. We could get at least one, for this place. No signature, just numbers. That night, I made tea and sat by the window. The moonlight caught the edge of Jack's photograph on the mantel. I spoke softly into the empty room. They're just concerned, I told myself. They don't mean harm. But even as I said it, I heard the lie in my own voice. Months passed. Small things shifted. My spare key went missing. Rachel started helping with my online banking. She said the interface was confusing. One afternoon she called to ask for my login, just to check something. I refused, and her silence stretched long enough to feel like punishment. At Christmas, Michael gave me an envelope instead of a wrapped box. Inside was a brochure for a senior living community, Travis Lakeside Residences. A smiling woman in a lavender sweater stared up from the glossy page. Independent living, it said in large print. Luxury and safety combined. I kept my voice steady. I'm still independent, Michael. He laughed, quick and tight. Of course, Mom. But wouldn't it be nice not to worry about maintenance? You deserve rest. Rachel added, you've done enough, Margaret. Let us take care of things now. Their words sounded loving. Their eyes did not. When they left, I put the brochure in the bottom drawer with the unpaid bills, the kind that never stop arriving. I looked around my kitchen, same ceramic mug Jack used every morning, same ticking clock, same crack on the tile I'd been meaning to fix. Everything still belonged to me, yet I felt like a guest. The following spring, I noticed another change. Michael stopped asking, he started deciding. He told me he'd scheduled a valuation visit from a realtor, just to explore options. When the woman arrived with her clipboard, I made coffee for both of us and stayed polite. But when she asked, are you the owner, Mrs. Ward, or should I speak directly with your son, something inside me broke cleanly in half. I am the owner, I said. And I decide when and if this house is ever for sale. Her cheeks flushed. Oh, of course, I waved it off and walked her to the door. Michael was waiting outside in his car, pretending to check emails. When our eyes met, he looked away. That night, I opened the old lockbox in my closet where Jack's tools used to be. Inside were the original deeds, folded neatly, my name printed in bold. I ran my fingers along the paper's edge until the tremor stopped. The next day, I called Michael. My voice was calm, almost kind. Don't send anyone to my house again without asking, all right? He sighed, impatient. Mom, I'm just trying to help. I know, I said. But help and control are not the same thing. He didn't answer. The line clicked. That was the last time we spoke without lawyers between us. The first crack, as I understand now, isn't about property or money. It's about perception, the moment they stop seeing you as the woman who raised them, and start seeing you as an asset they can rearrange. That dinner, that note, that brochure, it was all prelude. The warning hum before the power goes out. And I, foolishly trusting, kept the lights on for everyone but myself. The months that followed were like living beside a slow leak, nothing dramatic, just the steady hiss of something you can't quite locate. I began to sense that conversations had already happened without me. A family gathering arranged through a group chat I wasn't part of. A photo online, birthday cake, candles, smiles, posted by Rachel with the caption all together. Everyone was there except me. When I asked Michael about it, he said, it was last minute, Mom. You wouldn't have liked the noise. I remember answering softly, you didn't ask me. He laughed, a short sound with no warmth. Next time, okay? There was never a next time. Calls went unanswered. Texts read but not replied to. Evan, ever the diplomat, would surface now and then with a half-truth. You know how busy they are, Mom. Don't take it personally. But he didn't visit either. I began leaving my phone on the counter, volume up, just to hear it ring. Some evenings it did, telemarketers, mostly. Rachel became the new architect of my exclusion. It was subtle, precise. When she came by, she'd speak in plural. We think you'd be happier somewhere smaller. Or we've been handling the finances, you don't have to worry anymore. I would smile, pour her tea, and answer with equal calm, Rachel, I'm not worried. But I was. I first noticed her control in small domestic gestures. She started rearranging drawers when she helped clean. The checkbook I kept by the phone was moved to the office desk. My spare keys disappeared for a week, then reappeared in a bowl by the door as if they'd always been there. One afternoon, I found her in the laundry room, holding Jack's old toolbox. Oh, she said lightly, I was just curious what's inside. Inside were the trust documents, sealed envelopes, and Jack's letter from years ago, the one I hadn't opened since his funeral. I took the box gently from her hands and said, Curiosity can be dangerous, Rachel. She smiled like it was a joke, but her eyes didn't move from the latch. I started keeping the box elsewhere. By spring, they began suggesting solutions. Michael sent me listings for retirement condos, all bright walls and artificial cheer. Rachel arranged a meeting with a family financial advisor without my consent. I arrived out of politeness. The man across the table greeted me with a practiced smile and a folder already labeled Ward Family Transition Plan. When he began describing asset realignment and simplified ownership, I realized he was reading from a script they had written. I listened until the end, thanked him, and left. The next morning I closed my joint account with Michael and opened a new one under my name only. I didn't announce it. I simply documented it. Then came the tone shift. Rachel stopped pretending to be gentle. You know, Margaret, she said one afternoon while measuring the curtains in my living room, sooner or later, we all lose independence. Might as well accept it early. Her words landed like cold water on a flame. I folded the fabric she'd been touching and replied, Independence isn't something you lose. It's something people take when you stop defending it. For a moment, I saw a flicker of irritation in her perfectly composed face. Then she smiled again, as if the conversation hadn't happened. That evening, I went through my bank app. The balance was fine, but one account, the household one I'd set up years ago for shared expenses, had unusual withdrawals. Small, frequent, always rounded figures. Utilities. Maintenance. Family fund. Words that meant nothing specific. I wrote each transaction down, date and amount, in my spiral notebook. I learned a long time ago that paper remembers even when people don't. By summer, I was the ghost at the edge of their gatherings. They posted photos of dinners at restaurants I'd recommended, using recipes from my old notebooks, tagging everyone but me. Evan stopped by once with flowers, awkward, nervous. They think you're stubborn, he said. Stubborn keeps roofs from leaking, I answered. He looked down, embarrassed. They're just trying to modernize things. Make it easier. Easier for whom? I asked. He had no answer. I began saving copies of everything, bank statements, emails, even grocery receipts. I labeled folders by month, then hid them behind the linen sets Jack bought on our 25th anniversary. It wasn't fear that drove me, but instinct. Something in my bones whispered, prepare quietly. Then the invitation stopped completely. My birthday passed without a card. The front garden grew wild. Michael used to mow it as a boy, now he drove past without slowing down. One Sunday, I saw their car parked outside but they didn't come in. Through the blinds I watched Rachel point at the house, speaking quickly. Michael nodded. Then they drove away. I told myself they were just planning renovations, maybe discussing value. But deep down, I knew. They weren't planning around me, they were planning after me. At night, I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and listen to the hum of the refrigerator. The sound became a companion, steady and unjudging. I'd trace the edge of Jack's letter still unopened in my memory and wonder if he had sensed this too, the slow unthreading of the family we built stitch by stitch. By autumn, tension was the new air we breathed. Rachel's text grew short, clipped, need signature on insurance form. Meeting Tuesday. Don't forget papers. Michael's voice, when he called, carried the tone of a manager checking progress. Not a son speaking to his mother. The line between help and takeover had vanished. I kept my composure because panic only feeds predators. I spoke softly, moved deliberately, and stored copies of every conversation. I didn't know when the real betrayal would come. I only knew it would. Because people who test boundaries are not looking for approval, they are measuring resistance. And I had just begun to realize mine was stronger than they expected. It was a Friday night in late October when they called. Rachel's message said, "Family meeting. 7 p.m. important." The tone felt rehearsed, polite but edged. I baked lemon bars, habit, not hope, and drove to their house in North Austin. The porch light was on, the door already unlocked. Inside, the smell of new furniture and disinfectant replaced the warmth I remembered. Michael sat at the dining table, sleeves rolled up, papers arranged in a precise fan before him. Rachel poured wine, one glass short. Mine, I realized, was missing. "Mom," Michael began, gesturing to the seat across from him, "we've been reviewing the family situation. There are legal and financial details that need realignment." I sat down quietly. "Realignment," I repeated. "That's an interesting word." He sighed as though I were the difficult one. "We just need you to sign some documents. It'll simplify everything. Estate transfers, power of attorney, ownership adjustments. It's routine." Rachel slid a thick folder toward me, her manicured nails tapping a rhythm. "This is for your protection," she said. "And the family's." I looked down. The first page read, "Irrevocable waiver of estate rights." The sum beneath it was written in neat black ink, total assessed value, $2,142,600. The assets listed one by one, Ward Family Holdings LLC, the Lake House property, retirement accounts, investment portfolios, all the things Jack and I had built with sweat and exactness. Everything with both our names now reduced to columns and signatures. I said nothing. Silence unnerved them. Rachel filled it quickly. "We've already talked to a consultant. It's best to consolidate everything now, while you're healthy. Otherwise, taxes later could be complicated." Michael leaned forward. "Mom, please don't make this hard. Dad's gone. It belongs to us now. You can still live comfortably, we'll take care of you." There was a pulse of heat behind my ribs. "Take care of me," I repeated. "Of course," he said quickly. "You don't need to worry about anything. We'll handle the house, the accounts, even the trust fund." Rachel smiled without warmth. "You've worked enough. Let us manage things." I lifted the pen, not to sign but to feel its weight. Heavy. Smooth. Something that once meant trust. "You've already been managing, haven't you?" I asked. "Those maintenance transfers from my account, the documents filed without my signature, those were you." Rachel blinked, just once. Michael frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the missing funds and the documents that reached the bank last month, your initials on them. You didn't expect me to read the audit report, did you?" He looked at Rachel, then back at me. His voice hardened. "Mom, don't start making accusations you don't understand. You're tired. You need rest." That word again, tired, as if exhaustion made truth irrelevant. Rachel's tone softened dangerously. "Margaret, please. Sign the papers and stop being difficult. We're family. Don't let pride ruin this." I could feel the tremor in my hand, but it wasn't fear, it was fury contained. I placed the pen down carefully and closed the folder. No. Rachel's face froze, her practiced calm cracking just a little. Michael's jaw clenched. Mom, you don't understand. This is already in motion. Then stop it, I said. Because I won't. He stood, looming the way boys do when they forget they once looked up to you. You're being unreasonable. And you, I said softly, are being greedy. Silence. The clock ticked. Outside, the streetlight buzzed faintly. Rachel exhaled through her nose, slow and deliberate. Fine. If you won't sign, you'll regret it. Things will get messy. I looked at her and saw it, the certainty of someone who believes they've already won. I rose from the table, smoothing my coat. Messy, I said. You should remember, Rachel, I used to clean operating rooms. I know how to handle a mess. I walked toward the door. My steps were steady. Behind me, Michael's voice followed, sharp and low. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Mom. I paused only once, hand on the doorknob. You've already made it harder than it ever should have been. Outside, the air was cold, the kind that carries sound farther than it should. I could still hear Rachel's whisper as the door closed behind me, she'll cave. They always do. I stood on the sidewalk, the folder's imprint still on my fingertips though I hadn't taken it. The street was empty. The moon hung low, silver and disinterested. When I reached my car, I sat for a long moment before turning the key. I looked back at the house, lights glowing, silhouettes moving behind glass, and realized something sharp and final: I was no longer welcome in the family I created. The betrayal wasn't the papers. It wasn't even the money. It was that my son looked at me and saw liability instead of love. As I drove away, my reflection flickered in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked older but clear. The kind of clear that comes when denial finally dies. The streetlights blurred into lines of gold as I whispered, they've mistaken silence for surrender. And in that quiet, I made a promise to myself, this ends tonight. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. There's a moment, when the ground falls away, that instinct demands noise, but I've spent a lifetime mastering silence. I walked out of Michael's house and into the cool October night, my shoes clicking against the concrete like a metronome counting the beats of control. The air smelled of cut grass and something metallic, like rain still trapped inside the wind. The porch light flickered, then steadied. I stood beneath it, letting the sound of their voices fade behind the door. She'll cave, Rachel had whispered. They always believed I would. Dependable, agreeable Meg, always smoothing things over, always rescuing others from their own mistakes. But not tonight. By the time I reached my car, the sky had turned the color of pewter. I sat in the driver's seat for a long while, engine off, hand still on the steering wheel. My pulse slowed, my thoughts sharpened. I knew what had to happen, and I knew it had to start quietly. At home, I poured myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, the way Jack liked it, 2 sugars. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the old clock above the stove. 11:52 p.m. The second hand moved steadily, unbothered. When I finally rose, I went to the laundry room. It's a small space, smelled faintly of detergent and thyme. Behind the cleaning supplies, beneath a folded towel, was the steel lockbox Jack had installed 23 years ago. The boys never knew it existed, even when they were young. He called it Mom's medicine tin to keep them away. I pulled it forward, dust rising like old ghosts. Inside lay everything I thought I'd never need again. Documents bound by a rubber band, a small brass key, and a sealed envelope addressed in Jack's handwriting, to Margaret, if they turn. For a moment, I simply stared at his script, strong, deliberate, the kind of writing born from a man who believed in straight lines and clear conscience. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The paper inside was yellowed but crisp. If you're reading this, Meg, it began, it means they've forgotten what we taught them. I saw it coming. Pride does strange things to good blood. You'll want to trust them. don't. Before I got sick, I moved every major asset to your name. Power of attorney, trust ownership, full authority over Ward family holdings. Elias Hudson knows everything. Call him. Protect what we built. Below the letter were the documents, notarized transfers, account certificates, corporate ownership ledgers, all signed by Jack before his final hospitalization. He had known. I sat on the floor, surrounded by proof of his foresight. The realization hit with quiet force. While they'd been plotting to take from me, I already held the keys to everything they wanted. At 2:19 a.m., I dialed Elias Hudson. He was our old attorney, a man Jack trusted more than anyone. The phone rang twice before he answered, groggy but alert the moment he heard my voice. Meg? Are you all right? No, I said simply. But I will be. I need to activate Jack's final provisions. Every one of them. There was a pause. That's serious. Are you sure? Yes. My voice didn't shake. Today. Understood, he said. I'll start before sunrise. After the call, I gathered everything, Jack's letter, the documents, the lockbox key, and placed them in a canvas tote. I changed into jeans, tied my hair back, and slipped on the same jacket I'd worn to the hospital the night Jack died. It still smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. Before leaving, I walked through each room slowly. The photographs on the mantel, the old clock ticking, the faint creak of the hallway floorboard, each detail felt both dear and disposable. I touched the doorframe as I passed, the wood worn smooth from years of hands that believed this was home. Outside, the world was still. The moon hung low, caught between clouds. I breathed in the cool air and felt something uncoil inside me, not grief, not rage, but clarity. I drove downtown as dawn began to stain the horizon pale blue. The city was half asleep, delivery trucks rolled down empty streets, lights flickered on in cafes. When I reached the law office, Elias was already waiting, coffee in hand, shirt wrinkled, expression sharp. We spread the documents across the polished table. He verified signatures, cross-checked dates, opened secure portals I didn't know existed. Each form he stamped felt like reclaiming a piece of my life. By mid-morning, the assets were frozen under my sole authority. Every trust account, every property, every corporate vote, all legally bound to my name. Elias looked at me over his glasses. You've done everything right, Meg. They can't touch this without you. I nodded. That's the point. When I left his office, the city was awake. People hurried past with coffee cups, unaware that somewhere in Austin, a woman their mother's age had just turned the tide of her own story. Back home, the house felt different, lighter somehow. I brewed another pot of tea, folded Jack's letter carefully, and placed it inside the lockbox again. Not hidden this time, just kept. I stood by the window, watching sunlight break through the clouds, and realized what power actually felt like. Not loud. Not cruel. Just still. Michael and Rachel believed they had cornered me. They thought the paperwork was their weapon. But Jack had handed me armor years ago, I had simply forgotten to wear it. The betrayal had ended the moment I said no. What began now was something else entirely, a quiet war fought with documents, patience, and truth. I wasn't just reclaiming assets. I was reclaiming myself. And as the clock ticked toward noon, I smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't triumph. It was recognition. They had underestimated me. And that, I knew, would be their undoing. At 12:04 p.m. I drew a line under the morning and began the afternoon with intent. The kettle clicked off, I left the tea. This was not a day for comfort. I took Jack's documents, my spiral notebook, and the black pen that never bled through a page. A nurse's habit, start the clock, own the shift. First call, Frost Bank. I gave my name, date of birth, the last four, the trust number, the LLC registry, and the security phrase Jack and I chose, Blue Porch. My voice was steady. Effective immediately, I'm exercising sole authority under the attached instruments. Freeze external transfers on all trust accounts. Revoke third-party view access. Require my authorization for any changes. The representative asked careful questions. I answered. Her tone changed. Mrs. Ward, I can see that authority. Consider it done. I wrote her name and the time, 12:27 p.m. Second call, the broker. Place administrative holds on Ward Family Holdings voting shares. No proxy voting, no reallocation, no new margin. Send acknowledgements by secure email and by certified mail. He hesitated, mentioning Michael's communications. Those were acknowledgements, I said. I'm giving instructions. Another name, another time. Paper remembers. Third, property management for the lake house. Codes changed today. New keypad. Remove access for Michael and Rachel Ward. I'll pay the rush fee. I forwarded proof of ownership and my ID. Today I needed precision. Then passwords. I opened a clean page titled, Hygiene. Router, cameras, thermostat, garage, sprinkler, car app, bank, brokerage, utilities, cloud drive, health portal. I changed them to long phrases only I would recall, road trip lines Jack and I made up. I printed 2 copies, sealed one, slid it into the lockbox. I deleted the family group on the smart lock and added only myself and Skylar, trust earned by never asking for it. I drove to the storage unit on Koenig where we kept documents that didn't belong in a house anymore. Inside, I swapped the spare key box for a fresh one, recorded the new cylinder number, and moved the unit to a different row. People look where they have looked before. I live where they aren't looking yet. Back at the table, I drafted one email to Elias, the bank, and my CPA. Subject, consolidation and controls. I listed each step with timestamps, attached Jack's transfers and my ID, and used words that leave no air for misunderstanding, hereby. Effective immediately. Revocation. Exclusive authority. Not angry. Final. At 2:19 p.m. I called Michael. He answered on the second ring, brisk, Mom, did you sign? We need those papers. I looked at the confirmations already arriving. No, I said. I activated mine. Silence. He tried a laugh. Activated what? Everything your father prepared. A longer silence. You can't do that, he said. I already did, I answered, and hung up. I don't celebrate slam closes. I document them. I wrote, 2:19, call ended by me. Tone, controlled. Then I turned off my phone and left it face down. Noise is not urgency. The timer blinked midnight. I pressed stop. Next, the house. I called a locksmith from Ward Days. He arrived by 4, changed the cylinders, rekeyed the side gate, added a strike plate to the back door. We tested each lock twice. He handed me 3 keys. I kept 2, put one into an envelope marked for Skylar only, and slid it into a drawer with the lavender sachets. In the evening, I drove to the lake house. Sunset laid copper on the water. The technician met me with a new keypad. Codes changed, he said. Schedules? No schedules, I said. Only logs. On the deck, I stood where Jack used to stand and did not search for feeling. I checked the safe, contents intact, and placed the manila folder labeled audits under the bottom shelf. On the way home I stopped for fuel and bought a burner phone. I saved 3 numbers, Elias, the bank officer, and Skylar. If Rachel tried to file anything with false urgency, I wanted a line that never rang where she could hear it. I also bought dog biscuits, though I had no dog yet. I set them on the passenger seat like a promise, life will be added back, not only stripped away. At 7:36 p.m. I sat at my kitchen table again, the day folded behind me like a neatly stacked sheet. I opened Jack's letter once more and traced the words with my finger. protect what we built. I whispered back, I am. Then I wrote a final note under today's date, boundary established. Accounts secured. Locks changed. Communications narrowed. Evidence preserved. Noise minimized. Next phase, wait, confirm, and let their momentum work against them. I closed the book, turned off the light, and stood still until my eyes adjusted. The house hummed, faithful as ever. I did not feel victorious. I felt aligned. Power, properly used, is refusal to be moved by pressure that has not earned the right to move you. With that, the first action was complete at last. By Monday morning, the ripples had already begun to spread. Power, once exercised, never stays quiet for long. It moves through systems like current through a wire, invisible but absolute. I woke at 6:30 a.m., made oatmeal, and opened my email. The subject lines told me everything. Account access suspended, Ward Family Holdings. Transaction reversal notice. Investigation inquiry, unauthorized withdrawals. I didn't smile. It wasn't joy, it was confirmation. By noon, my attorney Elias called. It's done, he said. The trusts are secure, the assets locked. And Meg, his tone softened. They tried to move funds on Friday night, 10 minutes after you left the house. Of course they did, I said. He continued, those transfers bounced back at 12:26 p.m. this morning, flagged for potential fraud. Compliance wants to review Michael's authorizations. You may want to prepare for fallout. I already have. At 2:15 p.m., my phone began buzzing nonstop, Michael first, then Rachel, then Evan. I let each call ring out. My voicemail stayed blank, I'd disabled it that morning. By evening, a text arrived from Michael. Mom, what did you do? The accounts are frozen. We can't access payroll. This is serious. I typed, everything is exactly as it should be. Ask your lawyer. Then I turned the phone face down again. The next day, Elias forwarded an internal compliance memo. Michael's business accounts, Ward Family Developments, were officially under audit. Irregularities had surfaced, duplicate invoices, cash withdrawals without matching receipts, transfers to a secondary account under Rachel's maiden name. The phrase potential financial misconduct appeared 3 times. That same afternoon, Evan's message came through, hesitant as ever. Mom, I think Michael's in trouble. He says you've made a mistake. Can we meet? I answered, we can. Bring your conscience with you. He didn't reply. By Wednesday, Rachel made her first real move. A certified letter arrived by courier, addressed to whom it may concern. Inside, a declaration of concern for my cognitive capacity. She claimed I'd shown erratic behavior, implying I might be mentally unfit to manage my affairs. It was accompanied by a pre-filled petition for guardianship, ready to file. The date next to my forged signature read 2 weeks earlier. I took a photo and sent it to Elias. His reply came within minutes. Her mistake is timestamped. This is criminal fraud. We filed a counter-report with the local district attorney. Elias handled it quietly, attaching proof of the forgery, IP data, and the draft version Rachel had uploaded from her own cloud storage, a detail she didn't know left a digital trace. By Thursday, an investigator from the Financial Crimes Unit requested copies. At 4:48 p.m., Rachel called. I answered this time. Margaret, she began, her voice perfectly modulated. We just need to clear up a misunderstanding. Then speak clearly, I said. You froze our accounts. You embarrassed Michael in front of his partners. That wasn't necessary. What wasn't necessary, I replied, was stealing from the trust your daughter's college fund depends on. She inhaled sharply. You can't prove that. I don't have to, I said. The auditors already did. Her composure faltered for the first time. You'll regret this, she hissed. You can't survive without us. I let a small pause bloom between us before answering. Rachel, you keep mistaking dependence for love. That's your problem, not mine. I hung up. The next morning, Michael appeared at my door. He looked smaller somehow, creased shirt, tie askew, a man accustomed to being obeyed. He didn't step inside. Mom, you've gone too far, he said. You're destroying the family. No, I answered softly. I'm revealing what destroyed it. He opened his mouth to argue, but his phone buzzed. He read the screen, blanched, and without another word, turned and walked away. Later, I learned that the notice he'd just received was a formal suspension from his business pending the fraud inquiry. Within 72 hours, everything they had taken for granted crumbled. Heavy checkmark trust accounts, frozen until further notice. Heavy checkmark Michael's company, under audit for misappropriation. Heavy checkmark Evans' emergency withdrawals, reversed and flagged. Heavy checkmark Rachel's petition, under criminal investigation. The irony was perfect, each of their own signatures, each timestamp, each digital footprint became evidence. They had built their trap too neatly. By Sunday, Skylar came to visit. She brought groceries and quiet eyes. Dad's angry, she said softly, but he won't talk about it. Mom keeps saying you ruined everything. I handed her a mug of tea. Everything, I said, must be strong enough to survive truth. If it isn't, it deserved to fall. She nodded slowly. Are you scared? Not anymore. The week ended with one final email from Elias. Case files secured. They've stopped contacting us. Expect silence for a while. Silence. That was the first peace I'd had in months. I stood by the window as dusk fell over the yard. The motion lights flicked on, illuminating the path Jack once swept every Saturday. I whispered his name, not as prayer but acknowledgement. You prepared me for this. Out there, beyond the glass, the world looked the same, trees, gravel, stars, but I knew better. Everything had shifted. The consequences weren't revenge. They were simple arithmetic, take what's yours, protect it, and truth will do the rest. I had pressed a few keys, signed a few documents, and the entire illusion of their control collapsed like a house built on debt. They had called me weak. They had called me old. Now, they called lawyers. A week later, truth didn't arrive with sirens or statements, it slipped in on a whisper and sat down at my kitchen table. Every secret sheds an echo if you leave a quiet room for it to bounce in. I had Barney's adoption form open beside a cooling cup of tea when the back door clicked and Skylar stepped in, careful, like someone entering a chapel. Grandma, she said, setting her backpack on a chair. I think you should hear this. She held out her phone as if it were warm from a fire. She pressed play. The recording was grainy, but clarity has nothing to do with sound quality. Michael first, low and brisk, first take her keys. Then her signature. Then everything. Rachel's reply, smooth as glass, she won't fight. She never does. She still thinks we love her. A clink of ice in a glass. A door chime. Two people planning theft like weather. The file ended. The kitchen hummed, the fridge, the clock, my breath. Skylar sat without speaking. She had the Ward eyes, but hers stayed on me, not on the exit. Where did this come from? I asked. Dad forgot his phone was paired to the car, she said. It auto-saved the trip audio to the family cloud. I saw the alert. She looked scared of her own honesty. I didn't know what to do. You did the right thing, I said. I copied the file twice, one to a thumb drive, one to my locked folder. Paper remembers, so do chips. That evening, I forwarded the audio to Elias. Within an hour his reply arrived with timestamps, a certified transcript, and a list of applicable statutes. He wrote, intent established. 5 minutes later, a second message, found something in Jack's archive. A scan flickered onto my screen, my husband's neat block letters on yellow legal paper, check Michael's withdrawals. If anything happens, Meg takes over. Dated 6 months before his final surgery, witnessed, notarized, filed. Jack had looked past love and seen pattern. Morning brought motion without drama. Elias bundled the audio, Jack's note, and the forged guardianship draft into a single submission for the fraud investigators and the DA's office. The guardianship petition, we learned, had been edited from Rachel's own laptop. Her cloud retained the version history, complete with times, IP addresses, and every revision. Intent, method, and timeline, 3 legs under one simple chair. By noon, Michael called from an unknown number. I answered. Wind rushed around him. Mom, he said, brittle. Someone has a recording. I do, I said. He swallowed. You can't mean to use it. I don't have to use truth, I answered. Truth stands up on its own. He tried a different door. It was just talk. Then let the investigators decide what talk means, I said, and hung up. I made toast, because bodies need ordinary rituals while minds sign extraordinary papers. I fed Barney a piece, then walked the backyard, touching the rosemary bush Jack planted. The world did not tilt, only my understanding had. Elias called at 9:03 a.m. the next day. They're finished, he said. The audio ties their plan to the forged filings and the withdrawals. We'll keep you off stage. Your presence isn't required. He paused. Meg, are you all right? I am steady, I said. Not happy. Not triumphant. Steady. There's a grief that arrives when someone shows you who they are and you stop arguing with it. I felt that grief while I drove out to the lake house to breathe air that hadn't learned our names. The water held the sky like a clean sheet. I sat on the deck with the sun on my hands and let the recording play once more, then deleted it from my phone. Evidence lived with Elias, memory had no claim to my pocket. At sunset I opened Jack's note again. Protect what we built. He hadn't meant only dollars. He meant the invisible structure, self-respect, the right to say no without punishment, the quiet spine of a woman who knows what belongs to her. I folded the page along its old crease and slid it back where paper can rest. News didn't spread in headlines. It moved through smaller places, boardrooms, back channels, a partner's raised eyebrow when irregularities became a pattern. Rachel's charm met a docket number and learned the tone of fluorescent halls. Michael's swagger met a ledger and learned subtraction. Evan stopped calling altogether, which was a kind of confession too. Skylar texted me a heart and a period. I sent back a cup of tea and a porch light emoji. That was the language we needed. Exposure wasn't revenge, it was weather lifting. Fog doesn't apologize as it burns away. It simply reveals what the road has been all along. They had believed in speed, in pressure, in the obedience of an older woman with tidy drawers and soft shoes. But the truth moves differently. It doesn't rush. It arrives exactly on time, and waits, without raising its voice, until everyone can see. And when it came, I did not cheer. I took a breath, straightened the papers, and poured a cup of tea. Reconstruction didn't look like triumph, it looked like a calendar with open squares. The noise was gone. I kept what was mine, not for hoarding, but for stewardship. The house with the creaky third stair. The accounts Jack and I built penny by honest penny. The lake property where the wind turned pages only we could read. I walked each room and chose, what serves stays, what repeats old pain leaves. I began with the lake house. Paperwork in hand, I created a small charitable fund in Jack's name for widows over 60, women who had given their strong years to others and then found themselves budgeting air. The deed transferred cleanly. The first grant paid a winter power bill and a new front door for a storm-battered duplex. The second covered dentures for a woman who had learned to smile with her lips closed. Quiet money, moving where loud pity never visits. Next, I signed over the little family cottage to Skylar, the one person who kept her heart open when the house went cold. I didn't make a speech. I wrote a note, keys prove trust, stewardship proves character. Let your lights be on for those who knock kindly. She cried in the doorway and promised to fix the porch swing. I believed her. Faith, this year, was specific. Then I moved. Not far, just to a single-story place near Lake Travis, where cedar holds the evening and wind carries boat laughter without the brag. The closets are honest. The floors don't demand young knees. I chose a kitchen that fits a kettle, a notebook, and one faithful mug. I hung fewer photographs and kept only the ones that told the truth: Jack by the dented truck, the boys with cake-round cheeks, Skylar in a yellow raincoat, holding a worm-like treasure. 2 days later I brought home Barney. Old, polite, golden, eyes that understood closed doors. He followed me from room to room, choosing at last the rug where afternoon sun makes a square. We learned each other's clocks. He wakes me at 6:10. We walk the narrow path by the water, where turtles blink like coins and herons pretend not to watch. I carry dog biscuits in my pocket like proof I still know how to offer small kindness without being emptied by it. I changed my rhythms. Mondays I volunteer at the clinic with mismatched chairs and a bulletin board full of paper hope. I take blood pressures, refill water pitchers, and translate policy into sentences people can hold. Wednesdays I buy produce and flowers I don't need but carry gladly. Fridays I repair small things, a wobbly chair, a sticky drawer, because setting one object right can save a day you might otherwise misplace. I cleaned my digital rooms too. Fewer contacts. Quieter groups. No alerts that confuse urgency with novelty. I put passwords in a safe place and boundaries where I can see them. I still answer unknown numbers, once. No is a complete sentence. Not anymore is a map. Sometimes grief folds itself beside me and asks if I remember the soft version of a boy who brought me dandelions. I do. I bless that boy and release the man who chose to unlearn tenderness. Blessing without access, that's the discipline that keeps dignity intact. On Sundays I visit the lake house I no longer own, to meet the women who gather there. We drink tea on the deck and trade recipes, coupons, and stories that don't require pity to be worth hearing. We fix a railing, call a plumber, rewrite a budget. They leave with envelopes labeled first of the month and you, not them. The fund is small, the dignity isn't. Letters still arrive, some from lawyers closing files, some from strangers naming the quiet part out loud. Your note gave me permission to say mine. I place them in a shoebox that once held baseball cards. Wonder lives where inventory used to. Peace has weight. Not fear's weight, but the satisfying heft of a key ring pared down to the doors that matter. I sleep. I wake. Rain smells like metal on the porch rail, coffee blooms in the small kitchen. The porch light waits for me now. It does not wait for those who would take my name off my own door. I don't wish for different children. I pray for their healing and keep my receipts. Consequences still visit them, forgiveness will be welcome when it knocks without demands. Until then, my side of the street stays swept. At dusk, I sit with Barney and write one line in my spiral: I am still the steward of my life. Some nights that's all I manage. On better nights, I add a second: I choose gentle strength. Family isn't who shares your blood, family is who protects your dignity when it costs them convenience. I didn't lose my family. I clarified it. If this touched a nerve, you belong here. Subscribe to hear truths where silence becomes strength. Bring your tea, your story, and your second chances. We will not beg. We will rebuild, one quiet, rightful key at a time. And if you are listening from a kitchen like mine, with the hum of a fridge and a heart steady, know this: you are not late. Begin now. A month later they appeared at my door, looking smaller than I remembered. Rachel's lipstick was gone, her confidence too. Michael stood behind her, pale and silent. The woman who once locked me out of my house now clutched her coat like a shield. Mom, Michael began, his voice brittle, please. We lost everything. Help us. I let them in. The same table where I used to serve Sunday lunch now held evidence instead of food. bank transfers, forged documents, transcripts, timestamps, the complete record of their undoing. I didn't raise my voice. Truth didn't need volume. Rachel tried first. It was a misunderstanding. We thought you wanted. I stopped her. You thought I wouldn't notice. Michael looked at the floor. I made mistakes. Yes, I said. You mistook my kindness for weakness. They begged for leniency, but justice was already moving, slow and sure. The investigation had closed, restitution ordered, business licenses revoked, charges filed. Rachel's petition for guardianship became evidence of fraud. Evan, complicit by silence, lost his consulting account when the trust funds he drained were traced. I'm not your enemy, I told them, sliding the final page across the table. I'm simply done being your victim. They left with nothing but the echo of papers being gathered. On the porch, Rachel turned once. You'll die alone, she hissed. No, I said softly. I'll live alone, and that's different. When the door closed, the light over the porch flickered once, just like the night they'd locked me out. Only this time, it stayed on. Justice, I learned, doesn't shout. It documents, signs, and walks away calm. It lets the guilty hear their own footsteps fading into the dark they made for others. Inside, Barney lifted his head and thumped his tail twice. I sat beside him, listening to the quiet. It sounded like ownership. Like peace finally earning its name. A month later they appeared at my door, looking smaller than I remembered. Rachel's lipstick was gone, her confidence too. Michael stood behind her, pale and silent. The woman who once locked me out of my house now clutched her coat like a shield. Mom, Michael began, his voice brittle, please. We lost everything. Help us. I let them in. The same table where I used to serve Sunday lunch now held evidence instead of food. Bank transfers, forged documents, transcripts, timestamps, the complete record of their undoing. I didn't raise my voice. Truth didn't need volume. Rachel tried first. It was a misunderstanding. We thought you wanted. I stopped her. You thought I wouldn't notice. Michael looked at the floor. I made mistakes. Yes, I said. You mistook my kindness for weakness. They begged for leniency, but justice was already moving, slow and sure. The investigation had closed, restitution ordered, business licenses revoked, charges filed. Rachel's petition for guardianship became evidence of fraud. Evan, complicit by silence, lost his consulting account when the trust funds he drained were traced. I'm not your enemy, I told them, sliding the final page across the table. I'm simply done being your victim. They left with nothing but the echo of papers being gathered. On the porch, Rachel turned once. You'll die alone, she hissed. No, I said softly. I'll live alone, and that's different. When the door closed, the light over the porch flickered once, just like the night they'd locked me out. Only this time, it stayed on. Justice, I learned, doesn't shout. It documents, signs, and walks away calm. It lets the guilty hear their own footsteps fading into the dark they made for others. Inside, Barney lifted his head and thumped his tail twice. I sat beside him, listening to the quiet. It sounded like ownership. Like peace finally earning its name. They once told me, you don't belong in this family. For a while, I believed them. But now I understand, family isn't bound by blood, it's held together by loyalty, honesty, and care freely given. I didn't lose my family. They lost me when deceit became easier than truth. I lost only illusions. What remained was peace, quiet, and a steady kind of joy that no one can repossess. Some evenings, I light a candle beside Jack's photo and whisper, it's safe now. The flame wavers once, like acknowledgement. I still set an extra cup on the table, out of habit, not hope. The house feels full again, not of people, but of calm. If this story touched something familiar inside you, you belong here. Subscribe and join me where silence becomes strength. and dignity never asks permission to exist.